You don't have to throw away your scripts and playbooks to use network orchestration. With Itential, you can keep your automation code and add rich workflow orchestration to it. Visit itential.com to find out more. That's itential.com.
Take a network break. I'm Drew Conry Murray.
I'm Jonna Johnson.
Grab a virtual donut as we speed walk through this week's network and tech news. We're going to cover chip news from Broadcom, a couple of technical announcements from HPE, and some news from the intersection of politics and technology about HPE and Intel. But first, stick around for a Tech Bytes podcast. We're going to be talking with sponsor Lightyear. If you've ever dealt with telecom and ISP lifecycle management, it can be tedious and opaque. So we're going to talk with Lightyear about its SaaS-based platform that handles telecom and ISP procurement, tracks installations and inventory, manages billing and more. We'll also talk about the pain points Lightyear can solve, the components of the platform, and how Lightyear can help you save time and money, whether you need just a handful of WAN circuits or to provision connectivity for offices across the globe. Jonna, before we dive into the news and the red alerts, we have a couple of follow-ups to go through. First, in a recent episode, we were covering Fortinet adding support for a few post-quantum encryption algorithms into FortiOS. I asked our audience if they had info on other vendors doing it. Somebody in our Packet Pushers community Slack, Marvin, dropped a link to a slide deck from Cisco Live 2025 on Cisco's PQE, or post-quantum encryption roadmap. So just to be clear, I didn't see the presentation. I'm just going on what I could glean from the slide deck. But here's my understanding. At present, Cisco ASA version 9.2 supports RFC 9242, which is the IKE v2 key exchange, and RFC 9370, which allows multiple key exchanges to take place, which means you can do hybrid key exchanges generated that use traditional and post-quantum key exchange mechanisms. So that's what Cisco's doing in present. Cisco also says its VPN router and its MACsec implementation are what they call quantum resistant, which Cisco defines as making it mathematically harder for a quantum computer to attack the encryption. However, it does not designate any of its product as yet being post-quantum safe. It estimates that its ASA firewall line will support quantum safe algorithms by 2027.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense because basically it doesn't make sense to talk about quantum safe at this point. Quantum resistant is the term of art right now.
Yeah, so Cisco essentially saying, like, we're working on it, we have a roadmap, we have a plan, so stay tuned.
Well, no, Cisco's basically saying we have quantum resistant algorithms, which is what everybody else is saying. Full stop.
Right.
That's
yeah.
It's not like it's somehow less far along on the process than some other vendor. It's just that quantum resistant is the most that anyone can claim at this point. Yeah. And moving on, we have a second follow-up. This is in the where have you been all these years category. A listener writes in and says, thank you for the mention of DPDK on the podcast. Your information is out of date. Although initial work on DPDK came from Intel, it has been fully supported on ARM for almost 10 years. Azure and other cloud providers use DPDK on ARM in smart NICs, so it's likely there are more DPDK systems deployed on ARM CPUs than on x86. DPDK has been a multi-vendor project for many years, hosted by the Linux Foundation. The technical board has members from ARM, NVIDIA, NXP, Red Hat, Broadcom, Marvell, as well as Intel. It's still worth noting that, like any other project, things are subject to change as tech companies shift resources and funding. This is in response to Tom's observation that quite possibly we will start seeing DPDK on ARM. Tom responds, this is good news. I hadn't been kept up with DPDK for the past couple of years, but I'm not surprised they jumped to support ARM. Please do mention that, so I am, and make sure everybody knows Tom needs to study more. So there you go. Yeah. From the horse's mouth.
And thanks, Tom, for stepping in for me last week. Always appreciate it. It's fun to have you as a guest. And for everybody listening, we love the follow-ups. If it's a correction, that's great. We love to get things right. So if we mess something up, always let us know, or just a comment or anything else, packetpushers.net/FU, and the FU is for follow-up. All right, Jonna, let's dive into the red alert, and then we'll hit the news.
Okay, so this week's red alert is a Ruckus wireless vulnerability. 740 CVEs were created and 2001 were updated in the week ending August 7th. 332 were deemed critical, meaning they scored 9 or higher on their CVSS score, and 17 scored 10 out of 10. That's kind of low. This week's red alert is CVE 2025-44961, an OS command injection vulnerability in Ruckus SmartZone software. Prior to the current patch release, which is version 6.1.2p3, SmartZone was vulnerable to an OS command injection by an authenticated user. Basically, at least some of the commands requiring an IP address as input were not properly vetting the input they got in the IP address field, so it was possible to slip in special characters and splice in extra OS commands as a result. The fix for this one is, wait for it, patch to the current level.
There you
So
go.
upgrade to the current level. This one kind of reminds us of the insider threat, bad actors on staff, and also the need to limit the ability of bad actors externally to move laterally once they gain a toehold. And frankly, it also makes you wonder whether the patch for this bug is introducing a new one. And really, with this being yet another instantiation of a perennial OWASP top 10 security problem, the failure to properly handle inputs, it makes you wonder why these kinds of bugs keep happening in critical security layers of the network. Where's the accountability?
I think the reason is because humans write software and humans make mistakes.
Yeah, but it does seem that if you're going, you want to pay more attention to security critical layers of the network than others. So yeah, at some point, people need to start prioritizing security, and that still hasn't happened yet.
And I think you're right. Input handling has been an issue forever, and that's why it is in the OWASP top 10. So, yeah, please do better, folks.
Yeah, please do better. Moving on to the news. Drew, you have some news about Broadcom.
Yeah, Broadcom's been rolling out the chips. The newest is the Jericho4. It's now shipping. It incorporates improvements aimed at boosting networking speeds and throughputs in large networks and among data centers, specifically, of course, those that serve the needs of AI training and inferencing clusters. Broadcom saying the Jericho4 is purpose-built for distributed AI infrastructure, meant to allow AI workloads to scale easily across racks, across clusters, and even data centers in different geographic locations. Broadcom claims that they can do this without losing performance. Some numbers, they say it delivers 51.2 terabits per second of lossless deep buffered Ethernet. There's also congestion-free remote memory direct access over converged Ethernet, or RoCE. It also supports 3.2 terabits per second hyperports. This is a new one. I guess hyperports are bonded 800 gig ports. And they say this eliminates load balancing inefficiencies and boosts utilization by up to 70%. Jericho4 is also standardized. Broadcom also says Jericho4 is compliant with the Ultra Ethernet standard, and the Ultra Ethernet Consortium is rolling out standards to make Ethernet a suitable transport mechanism for AI workloads.
I find it really interesting that the Ultra Ethernet standard compliance is like the last mention here. It's like, oh, it does this, it does that, it does the other. And by the way, it's compliant with this standard, which basically only came out a couple months ago. So that just gives you a sense of how quickly things are moving in this space.
Yeah, for sure.
Moving right along, InfoBlox has added new features to its threat defense platform, which beef up DNS security. These include predictive capabilities designed to preempt AI-driven attacks by blocking malicious and high-risk domains and endpoints 68 days earlier, and has a claimed false positive rate of, wait for it, 0.0002%. That's not 2%, that's 0.0002%.
Huh.
The Threat Defense Platform, delivered as SaaS or in appliances, analyzes DNS traffic to help enterprise customers see and mitigate cyber threats in real time, which is particularly important for DNS attacks. In addition to predictives, the enhancements add improved reporting on quantifiable reductions in threats to the enterprise, a consolidated and more intuitive, at least according to InfoBlox, more intuitive interface to simplify how security teams monitor threats, a monitor-only mode that requires no changes in the DNS configuration for an extended try before you buy model approach, I should say, and initial trust building, and asset data integration to add context to console data for faster and more meaningful investigation and reporting. All this sounds pretty darn good, and it is also pretty well needed given that AI-driven attacks are well on the rise. I don't have statistics to back that up, but this is what we're seeing anecdotally from clients and others. Drew, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so they're very specific about this 68 days earlier. Do you have a sense of what they mean 68 days earlier than what?
I do not, unfortunately. That is probably shouldn't have included that because I'm not quite sure what they're talking about there.
Okay, I assume it means, once these domains and malicious sites are set up, they find them faster, I guess. I don't know. And that
I think that's the basic gist, but I don't know why it's 68 as opposed to 66 or 67. So
yeah, I guess I don't know.
Or 69.
And that 0.0002% false positive rate is also very specific. Curious where they got that number, but.
Well, again, it's an internal. Again, this is sourced to InfoBlox. This is an internal test that they've done, which always should be taken with a grain of salt because there's no way to prove that the vendor didn't cherry pick. Not that we're accusing them of it. Just saying.
Just saying. Moving on, HPE made some announcements. I'll start. They've announced a new AI Copilot for their SASE offering. The SASE Copilot is an LLM-based chatbot, so network and security teams can ask questions using natural language to help them understand SD-WAN and SASE performance, monitor network activity, conduct investigations, and look for security gaps. So the idea is instead of you having to dig through dashboards and reports, you can just chat with this Copilot, treat it like an assistant to help you get answers faster. The Copilot's LLM is built on AWS Bedrock. HPE says this Copilot will include a basic set of capabilities out of the box for free. Over time, they'll offer premium capabilities for an additional license. However, the Copilot is not yet available. General availability is still to be determined, but if you are on the HPE SASE platform, I guess you've got a Copilot to look forward to.
Yeah, and what I like about this, Drew, is that HPE's example questions that users might ask include things like, are there any open ports on my network I should be aware of? Or what traffic has been blocked in the last 24 hours? Or can you make sure my secure web gateway deployment is optimized? And what's interesting about this is that AI is actually, or at least LLM-based AI is actually quite good at these kinds of things that are essentially search engines on steroids. Like we can go out there and find this information faster than a human can do. Can you make sure my secure web gateway deployment is optimized makes me scratch my head a little bit, because I think what the chatbot is going to be doing is comparing the configuration with the recommended configuration more than anything else. And I'm not quite sure that optimized really means optimized for my environment, but it would be interesting to find out what the answer actually is.
I did feel like that was, what ports are open, what traffic has been blocked. Yeah, that's kind of what you would get out of a dashboard, and you can just ask about it. But this optimizing my deployment seems like that's a whole different level of capability. So I am curious to understand just how capable this SASE Copilot would be. Given, you're right, my assumption would be it would look at HPE documentation on sort of best practices around deployment and base its response off that, and whether that actually fits your environment or not. I guess that's why you need a human in the loop.
Yeah, and that's why I'm sort of calling that out and flagging it. It doesn't mean it's wrong.
Right.
It's still useful. But people need to understand and be aware of the limitations of LLMs and chatbots. And I really don't want to use AI because it isn't AI. It's just a powerful algorithm. Let's look at it that way. Okay. So don't blindly assume that its answer to your is it optimized is necessarily correct. So
yeah, it's not magic.
And HPE continues the drumbeat of technical announcements. It's expanded Aruba Networking Central's Zero Trust reach and application and content classification. HPE's Aruba Networking Central Network Access Control is HPE's foundational tool for creating zero trust architectures in an Aruba environment. The company has expanded it to enforce security policies on Juniper and third-party network equipment, as well as Aruba's own. This will allow the Aruba NAC to enforce identity-based and granular access controls globally for user endpoints and, fun fact, IoT devices. HPE is also integrating App Engine with Aruba Networking Central to support real-time application classification to increase the effectiveness of risk-based network security policy enforcement and provide more granular visibility into traffic. So this is basically meat and potatoes technical advancements, but both very welcome.
Yeah, so essentially you can take Aruba's NAC and use third-party switches like Juniper's to do policy enforcement, which is a new capability. I think they also said Cisco and Arista switches can also be incorporated into the Aruba NAC for policy enforcement. So yeah, nice feature.
Yeah, and I do like the application classification because that is something that's been a headache for a lot of our clients over the years. So having that done automatically is kind of nice.
And now a quick word from Packet Pusher sponsor Itential. In my Python work, I have found that there is lots of power, but lots of detail. The deeper I go into the code, the more challenging it gets to keep the network up to date as I intend in an automated way. And as a result, I tend to write a script that does a specific thing predictably, and that's it. Now, if I am honest, I am not as disciplined as I should be about error handling. I start off with a script that works fine most of the time, but if it fails, I do not always have the code for that, and I say this to my shame. And the problem is compounded if I were to try to integrate a bunch of other systems together beyond just the network infrastructure, such as updating the source of truth or acting on telemetry or reacting to network discovery, interacting with ServiceNow, etc. This is where Itential makes fantastic sense to me. I want a platform that helps me handle those interactions, that makes it easier to handle exceptions, that can execute a rollback if a change didn't go well, that can talk to any API I need it to without it being a big deal. In other words, Itential's tools give me a platform that I can build an orchestrated workflow system on top of, no matter what my company's tool stack looks like. And I can do that all while integrating scripts and playbooks that I've already written. I don't want to have to throw all that work away just to use Itential, and I do not have to. Itential just makes what I've created work better and plug into my company's IT infrastructure. To find out more about Itential's products and how they help you build a network orchestration platform that integrates with your business, visit itential.com. That's itential.com, and tell them Packet Pusher sent you.
Moving on, we're going to, speaking about AI, Cisco has donated an agentic AI project to the Linux Foundation dubbed Agency, which is pretty good. The project provides infrastructure for AI agents to discover, identify, and message one another. It also provides observability tools to monitor and debug multi-agent workflows. The Linux Foundation says Agency includes mechanisms for agents to find and learn the capabilities of other agents. It provides cryptographically verifiable identity and access control for these agents and supports agent-to-agent communication using the SLIM protocol. I am not familiar with that protocol and need to dig into it, but just wanted to call that out. Agency was originally launched in March 2025 by Cisco as an open source project from its Cisco incubator firm Outshift. They have now slid it over to the Linux Foundation. And with the project moving to Linux Foundation, other vendors are signing on to the project, including Dell, Google Cloud, Oracle, and Red Hat. They are members. I thought this was interesting because as the AI agent, as agentic AI sort of expands as a category, of course, if you're going to have agents communicating with each other, which is the whole point, you do need ways for them to do things like discovery, identity, make it cryptographically secure so that they can, verify and communicate securely and so on. And there's a whole bunch of different protocols that are emerging trying to do this. So you've got MCP protocol, originally developed by Anthropic. You've got Google that rolled out something called A2A. IBM rolled out one called ACP. So there are all these projects bubbling up. And I mean, that's great because the industry can kind of look at these and see where things land. And they're also like MCP originally came out without any real mechanisms for things like authentication and authorization, which is a problem. So nice to see if there's something like Agency project taking that on. I also, frankly, am glad to see Cisco deciding we're not just going to try to roll out a proprietary protocol and monetize it. We realize that it's better if there are industry-wide standards that we can all follow and then try to make our money elsewhere.
Yeah, and Drew, I just want to double and triple highlight the fact that what makes this interesting is not that Cisco was working on agentic AI and kicked it over the fence to
Linux Foundation.
To the Linux Foundation, yeah. What's interesting here is the fact that Cisco went ahead and developed the protocols for agent-to-agent communication, and as you just said, realizes that this needs to be standardized. And of course, we have no idea which protocols are going to win in the end, but at least if you have developed something and you wish it to become a standard, step one is getting rid of owning it and giving it to someone like the Linux Foundation. So I think the main thing here is not so much that it's sort of an agentic AI, whatever, it's that you're really kicking over the agent-to-agent protocols and including the security components of that and the identity and authorization protocols of that, because that is a critical challenge that needs to get solved before agentic AI can really take off. And it's noteworthy that there are a number of large vendors saying, yeah, we're gonna support this model at least for now.
Yeah, so the Linux Foundation also says the Agency project interoperates with MCP and A2A. Those are some of the other competing protocols, but of course, interoperate is there's a lot of devil in those details. I'll also note that A2A, which is another protocol developed by Google has also donated that to the Linux Foundation. So the Linux Foundation's got a couple of these now under its umbrella. Yeah, John, I agree with you about what's interesting is that this needs to be an industry-wide effort. It can't belong to just one organization. I sometimes worry about projects going over to the Linux Foundation because right now they have so much under there that it feels like it's kind of like a warehouse where you shove stuff. Like it always makes me think of Raiders of the Lost Ark when they're creating in the Ark of the Covenant into this giant warehouse full of boxes. I do think, though, that given the industry interest around agentic AI and the number of vendors involved in all of these projects, that this should be a pretty lively project within Linux Foundation.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I wish existed, to be perfectly honest, is an equivalent of the IETF for AI. The IETF was incredibly well run in its heyday by a man, including many people, but including a man who sadly died earlier this year, Fred Baker, of Cisco. But it was tremendously good at sort of wrangling lots of different competing stakeholders and interests and really trying to focus on what the best technical solution is, not what solution will give any one vendor an advantage.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that the Linux Foundation is in any way, shape, or form guilty of those things. No. I'm just saying I'm not sure, it really didn't start life as a standards body, and I'm not sure it's equipped to play the role of the standards body the same way the IETF developed itself to do. So, I'm not sure it's the right environment, but it's the one we have. What's that great Donald Rumsfeld quote? You go to war with the army you have, not the army you wish you had. So, hey, Linux Foundation, you're the army we have.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is, benefit to this being open sourced in that there's a lot of eyes on it. There's a lot of visibility. But yeah, I guess I would also feel a little bit more comfortable if agentic AI is going to take off like people are hoping and praying and projecting it will, that there is room, I think you're absolutely correct, for a more traditional standards body like IATF, IEEE. I don't know if they would be the right organizations for this, but I think there are. I
don't think either of them right now, but yes, something like that.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, and I don't want to keep hammering on this, but just to be clear, the reason I'm not trying to ding the Linux Foundation, but the difference between open source and standards is that standards you actually have to test for compatibility.
Right.
You actually, the IETF had rough consensus and running code. Yep. You have, I don't want to say adversarial, but people on different sides of a particular technical debate testing whether whose answer is right. Whereas open source is a bit more about, hey, I built it and other people can build it too. And it's a bit more of I don't want to say monolithic, that's the wrong word, but the idea that one person can sort of contribute their piece and then move on, and there isn't this sense of necessary adversarial, let's test this and make sure this thing actually does do a better job than this other thing.
I think you're right. It is very much free form. And of course, just because something is open source doesn't mean someone else, that an organization could say, well, we've got a proprietary version of it, but we're also open sourcing it and play around with that. That is, you're right, wildly different from a traditional standards body. So yeah, I think this isn't the end of this. Linux Foundation isn't the end of this. I think probably for now, Linux Foundation is a good place for this because there's a lot happening and a lot of interest. But over time, I would like to see some kind of agentic AI protocol or framework go to a legitimate's not the right word, but more traditional standards body.
Traditional. Yeah. Conventional, traditional, all those good words. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, we're certainly not calling the Linux Foundation illegitimate.
Not at all.
That would be fighting words.
Right. All right, links in the show notes if you want more, but John, let's carry on.
Yeah, moving right along. SonicWall has more firewall security woes. Ransomware gangs have been exploiting an as-yet unknown vulnerability in SonicWall Gen 7 firewalls to breach supposedly protected networks over the past few weeks. SonicWall and security research organization Arctic Wolf Labs have warned SonicWall customers to disable SSL VPN services, believing they may be at the root of the problem. Arctic Wolf reported on Friday, August 1st, that it had observed multiple attacks since July 15th, so that's in the past 2 weeks, or the 2 weeks immediately preceding, that have been deploying the Akira ransomware and probably utilizing a zero-day vulnerability to gain initial network access. Arctic Wolf notes, though, that the initial access methods have not yet been confirmed, always a worrying set of words when in a security breach. And though the existence of a zero-day vulnerability is highly plausible, credential access through brute force, dictionary attacks, and credential stuffing have not yet been definitively ruled out. In other words, folks, we don't know exactly what's happening, but stop using this capability until we figure it out. And this capability, again, is the SSL VPN services on SonicWall firewalls. So if you're listening and you're using SonicWall, turn off SSL VPN and use a workaround.
Actually, John, JJ and I talked about this on Thursday on a Packet Protector for an upcoming episode, and then after the recording, we realized some new information had come out. SonicWall is now saying that it's not a 0-day. It is a previously known vulnerability that SonicWall patched, and part of the issue is that it seems like there may be some customers who have used or maintained older credentials from their Gen 6 to the Gen 7 firewalls. It is not an SSL VPN issue.
Interesting. So look how quickly things can get obsoleted. So here we are just over a week after that. So basically, what is the fix? Should they still be disabling SSL VPN services, or simply just get new credentials and you're good to go?
Okay, so I'm looking at a story in Hacker News. The updated guidance offered by the company is to update firmware to version 7.3.0, reset local user accounts, and then enable some other features, including MFA and strong password policies, and remove unused or inactive user accounts. So there is essentially some patching you need to do, and also some account management stuff.
Okay. Well, moving right along, I think we sometimes talk about space networking, but you've got a news item from Stratosphere Network.
That's right. Yeah, this caught my eye. It's a really interesting story in the IEEE Spectrum online magazine. The investment firm SoftBank has announced it's going to test a telecom service in Japan using airships to beam 4G and 5G signals to users on the ground. These airships will literally float in the stratosphere, so that's 20 kilometers or about 12 and a half miles above the surface of the Earth. The airships are going to use helium to stay aloft and are reportedly going to be piloted autonomously. Trials are expected to begin in 2026. SoftBank says the initial use case will be to provide communication services during disasters and deliver telecom services to hard-to-reach locations. Over the long term, they're hoping to develop the program to offer commercial services and compete with terrestrial and satellite-based services. As part of the plan, SoftBank is investing in the airship maker it's using. This airship maker is called, I think, pronouncing it Sky, S-C-E-Y-E, Sky. Sky says its airships will serve as full-featured base stations with all the equipment that you find in a terrestrial cell tower. It is not just a relay for signals beamed up from the ground. Sky says a single airship could replace up to 25 cell towers and boasts a lower latency than satellite-based 5G, 20 milliseconds versus 45 milliseconds. I've got a couple more details, Jana, but I want to get your take first.
And just to be clear, we're talking about helium-based airships, so, like Hindenburg-y.
I don't think quite as big, but essentially, yes, just a helium ship. It's got some other features on it, stabilizers and so on, and supposedly it's got like some solar capabilities to help maintain power. But yeah, it's just an airship.
Geez, can we get any more steampunk?
Yeah.
I mean, just the image, it's already got the artificial sepia tones to it. Wow. My steampunk self is entirely thrilled by this, I've just got to say.
Get your top hat,
cool.
Get your goggles, get your Victorian jacket, and get out there and start using Stratosphere 5G.
And really, not to keep pushing on this, but look at the facial hair trends for men, and we're like already there.
Halfway, yeah. So I will note this tweaked, when I read the story, it tweaked something in my head that, Greg and I on very old Network Break episodes talked about. Facebook and Google have both flirted with stratospheric mobile services. Google launched something called Project Loon around 2011. The goal was to use helium balloons to put essentially 4G capabilities up into the atmosphere to help bring connectivity to underserved areas. It ran some trials in Kenya. They shut down the project in 2023. Facebook also had a similar project. Their idea was solar-powered drones to deliver internet service to underserved locations. They shut down the project in 2018. Now SoftBank is like, yeah, we're all in. We can make this work. So I'm curious.
Well, I just want to see what happens when the first one blows up. That should be some very entertaining visuals.
Oh, the humanity.
Right. All right. Well, now that we've reached the part of the episode where we talk about slightly less serious things, I have to now announce that the HPE-Juniper saga continues. just when you thought that this was all going to be nicely wrapped up, the network, HPE's Juniper Networks acquisition faces renewed uncertainty despite the DOJ approval, thanks to online conspiracy theories and more conventional political objections. A federal judge has been asked to review the situation and has the option of doing a full review of the deal and the DOJ approval to determine whether the merger is in public interest. The renewed scrutiny is due mainly to controversy over the DOJ's reversal of its position on the deal and the possibly directly related dismissals of DOJ staff, which has led Senate Democrats in the United States to call for an investigation. It is also driven, and here's my favorite part, driven in part by conservative personality Laura Loomer inserting herself into the situation with charges of political influence peddling. Yes, I did not have that on my bingo card, that Laura Loomer would get somehow involved in the HPE-Juniper merger.
Could not have predicted in a million years.
Yeah, seriously, people, do you not have something real to do? Please go away, do your job, whatever it is, and get out of the way of tech companies doing their tech things. In any event, HPE's stock is down, and CEO Antonio Neri faces increased pressure from activist investor Elliott Management in the wake of all of this. I just really, the only thing that pops to mind in this one is I can see Antonio Neri doing the Charlie Brown banging his head against the wall on this one. It's like, really? Like, what have they done to deserve this?
Yeah.
It may be a good idea, it may be a bad idea. Let them go through. There's a million mergers that in retrospect were stupid ideas, and there are a million more that were perfectly fine. And like, can people go solve real problems, please? Sorry, I'm editorializing.
Yeah, I again feel I'm not sure that this is a great deal for HPE and Juniper, just based on the business stuff. Do I think it's anti-competitive? I do not. So those are two entirely different things. And it's interesting that Senate Democrats are looking into this. Yeah. But yeah, Antonio Neri and Rami Rahim must be like, what did we do? What is our karmic
we
debt?
must have done something. Yeah, we must have done something in a prior life.
Man.
I mean, but yeah, and I would agree with you. Just to reiterate, fundamentally, this is not an anti-competitive deal because it increases the probability that HPE and Juniper will have a consistent management platform that will integrate all of the different devices, which makes it actually more competitive against the market dominant leader, Cisco, not less. And I know all the arguments that simply argue blindly on the number of vendors in a space, and they really miss the whole big picture, which is that being able to manage and administer vendor products consistently is a huge advantage for single vendor environments.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Well, since we can't let this end without even more politics, over to you, Drew.
Yeah, so just trigger warning, we are going to get it a little bit more into the political weeds here. So if you don't want to hear that, you can skip ahead 5 minutes and enjoy a very good Tech Bites with Lightyear. It is a really interesting solution to some serious telecom headaches. In any case, so U.S. President Donald Trump has demanded the resignation of Intel CEO Lip-Bu Tan over concerns about Tan's investment in Chinese tech companies. Intel appointed Tan as CEO in March of 2025. He previously ran chip design company Cadence Design Systems. My guess is that Trump's demand was likely sparked by the U.S. Senator Tom Cotton, who sent a letter to Intel raising questions about Tan's investment in Chinese companies. There's a couple of really good articles by Reuters who dig into this, and it's true Tan has invested in hundreds of Chinese companies, either himself or via venture funds that he has founded. Some of these companies that Tan has invested in have also been invested in by Chinese government funds or state-owned enterprises, including a company called China Electronics Corporation, which supplies material to the Chinese Army. China Electronics Corporation was sanctioned by the Trump administration in 2022. So Tan does have has a history of investing in...
You mean, hang on, 2020.
Sorry, in 2020, yeah. China Electronic Corporation was sanctioned by the Trump administration in 2020. So Tan does have a long history of investing in Chinese technology companies. Some of those companies have been sanctioned by the United States, and when that happened, there is evidence that Tan divested of them, but still has an existing portfolio of investments. So I on the one hand, I'm like, my personal inclination is to be like, Trump is an idiot, but on the other hand, I do think maybe there are issues here that need to be investigated and resolved.
Yeah, I have to say, Drew, I can't like slam my desk and say this is stupid because in fact I've been personally appalled by the degree to which people can be investing in something while holding a job that creates a conflict of interest. My particular bugaboo, since I grew up in the analyst world, was it, and many analyst companies still today, it is perfectly legit for the analysts to have friends and family shares in pre-startup companies and go running around touting those companies to their clients without ever mentioning this. And that appalls me. So the fact that you have the CEO of a major U.S. chip company that is also holding tons and tons and tons of stock and tons and tons and tons of other companies is kind of worrisome. I do understand. I'm a grown up. I get it. You don't get to where you're in a position to be considered for CEO for one of these companies without having lots and lots of industry connections. But it strikes me that this is not a cut and dried situation where you can just say Trump is being ridiculous and Tom Cotton, who normally I don't have a lot of respect for, is being ridiculous. I think there is a legitimate concern about some of these investments, particularly given that on some days of the week, the United States considers China a hostile foreign power.
Yeah, so I feel like I have to wonder what kind of vetting the board put Mr. Tan through. I assume it was significant, and they must have realized that these investments could cause an issue and decided they could weather it. I don't know, but now they have to find out if they can weather it. To me, the most simple thing would be for him to be like, I am divesting ownership in everything. He's got an investment company, I think, called Walden Investments. He could walk away from that, whatever, if he wants to keep this job. Or he could step down or come to some other kind of arrangement. But the Intel board has put itself, I think, in a very precarious situation because Intel is already kind of reeling. Mr. Tan was brought on to be the guy to come in and cut things and get Intel back on firm footing. He has now drawn the attention of the Trump administration, and we know that the Trump administration, once they have your attention, will shake you like a dog with a rag toy.
Yep, absolutely. And I know, Drew, you had mentioned that one option is to do a full-on divestiture, but it probably won't work. What are some of the other options?
I mean, obviously, Intel can decide that Tan has to go and then go back on the hunt for a CEO. I'm sure they will take a stock price hit for that, and I have to wonder how much more difficult it will be to recruit a CEO. One, just because of the state that Intel is in, it's going to be a very difficult project to turn that company around. And two, now that you are under the microscope of the Trump administration, who wants that job? The second option, I think, is to send Tan to the White House with a shiny gold bauble. He can present it to Trump, and then he can make up a phenomenal amount of money and pledge to invest it in U.S. manufacturing. I think just this week, Apple Tim Cook essentially did the same thing. Went to the White House, gave Trump a nice little gift, and pledged to do $100 billion in onshore manufacturing. Tan could do the same thing. They'd have to pledge even more. And the thing to, I think, understand is it doesn't really matter how much he pledges because it's not really real. For this administration, Trump just needs to have a number that he can tweet about. Intel never actually has to spend it. So I think maybe that's, if Intel just wants to try to make a deal, to me, that's the easiest thing they could do. The problem with that is once you cave, it's not the end of it. You're only signaling weakness. The administration will continue to press you if it feels like it to try to get more out of you. Intel is already, sort of beholden to the federal government for a lot of investment as they try to do this onshoring of chip manufacturing here in the U.S. So the Biden administration started this. Now the Trump administration is carrying it on. They could have Intel a bit over a barrel here. So it's a sticky situation. I'm tough to know what to do.
I don't see an easy fix. I would respond to the question you asked earlier, though, like why do boards not vet more seriously? I think because having investments in Chinese companies wasn't a problem until it was. These things go in cycles.
Right.
And so there is no standard that I'm aware of that says, oh, by the way, your CEO must not have investments in blah, blah, woof, woof, yap, yap. Mm-hmm. You can't just sort of check the boxes and say, have you tested that? It's got to be one of these, do we feel comfortable with it? And at the time, they probably did. So I can't fault the board at this point. But as you said, I don't know there's an easy out here. That said, it dawns on me that Intel probably has a lot of internal candidates that might be good fits for that job if they are if they do oust 10, but I doubt they will.
I'm curious, putting on your advisory or analyst hat, how would you advise the board?
That's an interesting question. I'd have to go and look at who is on the board and see what risk they would be taking from my advice first.
Right.
And I admit I haven't done that.
Also, you shouldn't give it away for free. Really, this is something you should charge for.
Well, no, but I think that's reasonable. At the moment, I'd probably go with your option B. Like, this is ridiculous. This is sort of ridiculous. I mean, it's not ridiculous, but it's sort of ridiculous. So, go promise $1.1 billion in fluff, woof, 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 with no dates for expenditure sometime over the next several millennia. You will spend $100 billion or whatever.
We'll spend $1 trillion on investments in the U.S.
Exactly. Since, in a sense, that kind of aligns with the strategy anyway that Intel has been moving on. Maybe they open up their Ohio manufacturing facility a little faster than they had recently announced they were slowing it down. I mean, there are ways you can kind of show that what you were going to do anyway aligns with what you just pledged. So that's the easiest way to make this whole thing go away. It just curdles my stomach because that smells an awful lot like, bribery and, third world. Sorry, we're not allowed to say third world anymore, but third world politics. But that's where we are now. Maybe that's just real politic, right?
Yeah, tough position. So good luck, Intel and Mr. Tan.
Yeah. This is that one moment where, if you're sitting around thinking, gee, I'm just a lowly network engineer, I wish I were a CEO, you're probably happy you're not.
The one day you might not be, yeah. All right, that wraps up the news. Jonna, where can folks get more from you?
Please hit us up at the nemertes.com site. That's NEMERTES.com, and fill out the contact us form, and I will be happy to reach out to you. We're not going to sell your contact information or anything like that. That's just so that we can connect if that's what you desire.
All right. I'm Drew Conroy Murray. I'm on Blue Sky at DrewCM. I'm lurking around LinkedIn, and I'm blogging at packetpushers.net. Again, you can reach out to us, packetpushers.net/FU, if you have a comment, correction, kudos, or a question. Please do stick around for our sponsored Tech Bytes podcast with Lightyear. If you've ever wasted hours on the phone or email trying to provision telecom services, Lightyear wants to talk to you. That's coming right up. Telecom and ISP lifecycle management can be tedious and opaque. On today's Tech Bytes, we talk with sponsor Lightyear about its SaaS-based platform that handles telecom and ISP procurement, tracks installations and inventory, manages billing, and more. We're going to talk about the pain points that Lightyear can solve, the components of the platform, and how Lightyear can help you save time and money, whether you need just a handful of WAN circuits or to provision connectivity for offices around the globe. Our guest is Dennis Thunkachin, CEO and co-founder of Lightyear. Dennis, welcome to the podcast. So, just to sort of set the table, what makes enterprise telecom such a pain?
Thanks for having me on, Drew. So just to be clear for the audience, when we're talking telecom, I'm talking about things like your ISP circuits, whether it be internet or WAN connectivity, your phone systems, your colo services, and such. And anyone listening to the show is likely aware ISPs do not make your life easy. Whether you need to quote a circuit, install a circuit, upgrade a circuit, troubleshoot a network issue, all of these tasks have in common that they require a lot of manual offline workflows to get done. And the lack of digitization in the ISP space means that all of your network information is often at the enterprise level housed in spreadsheets, if anywhere at all, making organization really hard for the average enterprise. And what this ultimately boils down to is that ISP service management is a data and workflow automation problem. ISPs don't have great knowledge of what network infrastructure is where, certainly not across ISPs, maybe not even in their own network, and they haven't digitized or standardized the workflows to catalog this infrastructure, quote it, and manage it. Meanwhile, there are thousands of ISPs, and none of this is standardized across any of them or between them. So enterprises have to buy these ISP services, so unfortunately, they're stuck with dealing with the outputs of this particular problem, which makes their lives really hard.
Okay, so that is a good description of the problem. At a high level, what is it that Lightyear's doing to make this better?
So Lightyear is what we call the telecom operating system. And effectively, it is workflow software that digitizes and automates the telecom lifecycle for an enterprise, from RFP to inventory management and bill payment through to like renewal or disconnect. And it solves the data side of this problem as well. So we've actually rebuilt the entire enterprise telecom process from first principles from the ground up to address these issues. So we've actually integrated with the ISPs themselves. We've built software that digitizes their workflows and standardizes workflows across all the different ISPs. So enterprises can buy and manage their network digitally in a completely vendor agnostic format. And we've also constructed the best data set in business telecom. So enterprises are always making optimized decisions about who they're buying from and why, rather than just dealing with random chance or convenience. And today, as a consequence of the software, enterprises who leverage Lightyear fully save over 20% or more on their telecom costs and over 70% of the time they'd spend on network lifecycle management. And today we have over 400 enterprise customers and have raised over 50 million in venture capital. We're working with companies like Okta, Palo Alto Networks, Allo Yoga, Five Guys, Teladoc, and many, many more.
Yeah, you guys are not like simply an aggregator of telecom or like a buying agent. There's a ton of stuff that you're doing. Deep interest to engineers. I was digging through your website to prepare for this show. There's a lot there. So would you go a little deeper? Explain the components of the platform, your platform, and how they all work together.
Yeah, and by the way, it's worth noting, you call out a good point, Ethan. We made the decision early on not to be an aggregator or a buying agent because that would make us a service provider, just like every other service provider, when our goal is to help the customer navigate the service provider landscape without any bias and making purely optimal decisions. And I think the best way to do that when the problem is around workflow and data is to build software to do this and not to be any form of a buying agent, because then we're just a dime a dozen like those in the rest of the industry. We want to be fully customer focused from the very first principles of how we build our software. So underlying the software are three core products that all seamlessly tie together. First, there's procurement, and procurement is software that utilizes our network and pricing intelligence to digitally create telecom RFPs for you, manage quoting, manage installs of circuits. So your circuit bids are now automated and optimized and centralized in a software pane. Then we have our network inventory manager, which establishes a digital system of record for your enterprise network, tracking over 30 core network data points per service. So, your static IPs are in one place, your circuit IDs are in one place, and it keeps all of that accurate and up to date across, your actual network and then all of your enterprise systems it may integrate with via API. And it automates things like service ticketing and renewal rebidding for you. So you can now disconnect the circuit with a click rather than having to call AT&T or somebody. And then third is our bill consolidation service, which takes the pain out of telecom invoice auditing and bill payment, and we'll actually digitize your invoices for you, get these audited and get these paid so you never have to deal with a service outage because you forgot to pay someone. So our procurement platform is actually free to use. So you could go to lightyear.ai, sign up and start using it or request a demo today. Our network inventory manager and bill consolidation service are like managed SaaS offerings. So we do charge a SaaS fee for this, but procurement is free.
And then there was a third tool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, our three offerings are procurement, network inventory manager, and bill consolidation. And, what I was just touching on is that they all tie together very seamlessly. So, let's say you're a network manager, you create a circuit RFP for a new circuit via our procurement software, you get quotes, you get it installed with Lightyear Project managing the process. After that, your circuit's live. You have static IPs, you have an account ID, maybe you eventually need to upgrade it, renew it. All of this information lives in your network inventory manager. It'll be kept up to date across your other enterprise systems. If you integrate this via API, you can export data, you can make a change to the circuit, you can manage a renewal, you can manage a disconnect. And if you have a bill consolidation service throughout the circuit's life, we will pay your bills for you, we'll digitize your invoices, and make sure that your invoiced amount actually aligns with your circuit contracted amount. And the cycle goes on and can multiply by however many services are in your network.
So on the procurement front, can I, if I'm in, say, Dallas and I need to buy some internet, some business bandwidth, business connections, can I see who the providers are in that city, compare them by cost, by service level, that kind of thing? Like, do I get a picture of the market?
Yes. So you'll get that on an individual service level. So, as you're probably aware, Dallas as a market has, or, pick any city, has tons of providers in it. Mm-hmm. And the actual individual market for bandwidth will differ based on lat long to lat long. Meaning, X coordinates versus Y coordinates, you may actually have a different market for bandwidth based on the difficulty to reach a specific site, the number of vendors that are on net or near net, and we'll actually give you an exactly lat long specific picture of the market for your service, whatever you're requesting. That allows you to compare pricing, service levels, construction timelines, et cetera, and also to note who's actually on net might be useful, who might be reselling access if a vendor is offering type 2, this, that, and the other, and that can be done not just in the United States, but also globally.
In your tracking, I think 1,200 providers, something like that?
That is right. And our goal is to cover every square inch of the globe. So if someone sells network to the enterprise, we want to get there eventually.
So how's this different from the way companies are managing telecom today?
So kind of like I was alluding to before, today's enterprise telecom management is for the most part manual and homegrown. Enterprises typically have set ISP relationships, maybe established a decade or two ago, that are built often based on convenience rather than data. And they're using human capital internally to manage bids and installs manually. They may track circuit inventory out of a spreadsheet. They may be having their AP team pay bills. It's not optimal, and it's very costly in terms of human capital. There are enterprises I know of that have entire, call it like 100+ person telecom ordering departments, which is kind of wild when you think about it. There are third parties that also exist to help with this, like telecom expense management systems or telecom brokers. And they often only help you with a component of the lifecycle, whether it be sourcing a circuit or sourcing a circuit in a specific geo, or TEMS, for example. They're very expensive, very clunky, and they focus just on bill payment. Lightyear is the first true software product built to address the entire telecom lifecycle, built from first principles with digitization in mind. And it digitizes the entire experience. It standardizes it across vendors, and it leverages the best data set in business telecom with network intelligence that ensures, Drew, as you noted, let's say you want to get business bandwidth at this, XYZ coordinates in Dallas, that we're giving you the exact market at those XYZ coordinates in Dallas. And also we're using pricing intelligence to make sure you're paying the most up-to-date market rates for those services. Our inventory management will track all of your services immediately upon install. Our bill payment will handle expense management for you. And throughout the process, we actually leverage AI to automate many back office components of our operation that do require manual sort of cataloging and workflow. And we integrate with a lot of the core enterprise systems you'd like to keep things up to date. So with the feature set, I know I just covered a lot. With the feature set that I just noted, there is nothing else that exists on the market today. It's quite difficult to build, unfortunately.
So you just said something I want to follow up on, that you integrate with other management tools I might have, because you said something like, we can track IP addresses, but I might already have a system for that. Or I've got workflows for having a job, go through our ordering system. What kind of tools do you integrate with?
So Lightyear has an API that can integrate pretty much with anything with a little bit of customized programming, but also we have some out-of-box integrations. And via API, we can push and pull Lightyear data from all of the most popular enterprise systems you'd like. Most commonly utilized we see are ServiceNow, Netbox, Meraki, and Splunk, where, for example, people may keep their static IP details stored in Netbox, and now whenever you buy a new circuit, you can sort of like refresh your circuit data within Netbox and keep that live within Lightyear, and or vice versa.
Okay, and that's out of the box. Netbox, ServiceNow, Splunk, and Meraki. That's out of the box.
Yes.
Who's the right size company to work with you guys? Are you looking for a specific sort of a company?
We don't necessarily, in the sense we work with companies large and small, and our enterprise customers today include companies that are Fortune 100 as well as small businesses. But a majority of our customers are mid-market to large enterprise. So call it, 1,000+ employees, or maybe 25 or more facilities with at least 50 telecom services deployed. We absolutely work with customers smaller than that. But the more you have in your network, the more return you can get from a system like Lightyear.
Cool. All right. Well, give us a cool customer story. You got an example of someone that's working with you?
Yeah. So one of my favorite stories is Alo Yoga, which you may be familiar with, the large retailer of athletic wear. And today, Alo Yoga has something like 200 locations across a number of countries, but they've expanded rapidly over the past 3 years with a very small IT team. And prior to Lightyear, they just had a couple of people managing circuit procurement and a rapid expansion plan. I think they were adding 100 stores in 1 year, and they were struggling to manage quoting with quote turnaround timelines. They had very tight store turnup timelines where everyone was blaming the IT team when there was an issue with the ISP and you couldn't run your POS. They would miss bills for all the new services they were turning up, leading to outages at new stores. And their team was just stretched absolutely thin. So quite high stress. And they started off with Lightyear's procurement software because they wanted to manage tons of store openings, which automated RFP creation. It tightened their quote turnaround timelines. And by the way, they were getting better pricing working with Lightyear. And then they were also getting better store turn-up timelines because they were quoting to the right vendors that had infrastructure at the site where we could help them also project manage things with less effort on their side. Then they started using our inventory management and bill payment software. Then they had moved their inventory management out of spreadsheets and into a software system that would live update and keep things up to date. And then on the bill consolidation end, they no longer had outages because they missed a bill or they forgot to pass the new payment details to their AP team. And now they have a much more organized system where they've been able to scale from just a small number of stores to over 200 facilities without adding a ton of heads to their IT team.
So you mentioned sort of the three main services you offer. Are there other things that you've got in the pipeline, or what's next for Lightyear?
So we raised a $31 million Series B late last year, and we've been aggressively utilizing that capital to invest in the product and grow the team to provide a better experience to customers. And I'm very focused on depth over breadth. For lack of better terminology, we want to be the Michael Jordan of all things telecom for the enterprise. So we have two big product launches coming later this year, with one coming up soon. So you can keep watch, but to not give away too much, we're adding a lot of functionality to our core procurement offering to better match that with the enterprise needs we're seeing. And we're deeply bolstering our expense management functionality. And early next year, we're planning to get into actual network operations and network monitoring and tie that actually back to your vendors and your procurement decisions to sort of like add that to the arsenal as well. We are also aggressively hiring to support all of this, primarily across engineering, sales, and support.
Okay, that's a lot. So yeah, we'll definitely be back in touch to find out what's going on. In the meantime, we referenced earlier you can use the procurement service for free, but if folks want to look at Lightyear, try Lightyear, where should they go?
Check us out at lightyear.ai, where you can simply get started and you can create an account or even request quotes on a site, or you can request a demo if you're interested in our inventory, bill payment, or just generally trying to figure out how things work with us. We would love to chat with you about it. And as Ethan noted earlier, the procurement software is free to use.
All right, one more time. That's lightyear.ai. We'll also have other links in the show notes that accompany this podcast if you want more details. Thank you, Dennis, for being here, and thank you for being a sponsor of Packet Pushers. Sponsors ensure that Packet Pushers can continue to offer high-quality, deeply technical content for your professional development for free. That includes technical podcasts for your professional development on networking, security, IPv6, DevOps, and more. We've also got an industry blog, 2 weekly newsletters, a community Slack group, a YouTube channel, and even an IRC group. You can find it all at packetpushers.net. All free, no login required. You can also hear us on Spotify, thought lead with us on LinkedIn, and rate us on Apple Podcasts. Last but not least, remember that too much networking would never be enough.